This simple statement is as important and fragile today as when it was written. The American Rifleman video collection is dedicated to the members of the National Rifle Association of America, whose patriotism helps protect this sacred American right. The National Rifle Association proudly presents the American Rifleman Video Collection. This outstanding collection is a tribute to the rich history of firearms, showing how the gun has changed the world like no other invention. A virtual encyclopedia of firearms, this series takes an unprecedented look at firearms evolution, from the invention of gunpowder and the earliest flintlocks, to the first revolvers and guns that changed the face of warfare, even new technologies of today and beyond. We'll go inside the minds of history's most brilliant gun designers, like Winchester, Colt, and Browning, Luger, Remington, and more. See how and why guns are designed the way they are, and what makes each unique. Gun ownership is a right entrusted to all Americans. Your participation in the American Rifleman Video Collection supports the NRA's efforts to protect that right. Whether you're an avid shooter, gun collector, or simply a proud American gun owner, you will find this exclusive NRA collection both revealing and fascinating.
The most critical weapon on the battlefield isn't the tank, the aircraft carrier, or the big guns of the artillery. It's the personal weapons of the infantrymen that always decide the day. For the warrior of the ancient world, it was the stone, the club, or the broadsword. Today, it's the small arms, the rifle and the pistol, that put the strength of a Roman legion into the hands of just one man. When one pictures images of war, the infantryman and his personal weapon often come to mind. This image is reinforced daily by television news reports from the world's trouble spots featuring soldiers with extremely sophisticated small arms. With all of today's specialized small arms, the modern infantryman has become the Army's jack of all trades. Matter of personal weapons, not only must he master his own array of small arms, but he must have a complete knowledge of the enemy's weapons as well. With such a wide range of technology at his disposal, today's soldier has quite an advantage over his fighting ancestors years ago.
The first small arm was probably a rock. After that, there were clubs, animal thigh bones, pieces of wood. These evolved into spears, arrows, swords, pikes. But the modern military small arm postdated the invention of gunpowder in China in the 13th century, and it spread to Europe, so that by the 15th century, gunpowder-based weapons, particularly explosive devices, were in widespread use.
With the invention of gunpowder, the power from a projectile instrument did not depend solely upon the physical strength of the attacker anymore. In theory, this was an advance. Yet for many years, firearms were inferior to spears and bows because of their crudeness and inaccuracy. The most prominent among these weapons was the hand cannon.
The hand cannon is just about what you would expect. Some kind of a tube that will hold X amount of gunpowder, and I'm talking about old-fashioned black powder. You do some kind of heated material, either a hot wire or a small amount of flame, or a little explosion by striking a small amount of powder to fire that missile out of the end of it. In the old days, hand cannons fired arrows, rock, brass bullets and ball, as well as lead bullets and ball.
It was kind of a comedy of errors for a number of years until they got to the cartridge-based ammunition and smokeless powder, where it could be measured precisely, and they knew the pounds per square inch it was going to be produced in the breech, the muzzle velocity, the weight of the bullet, the shape of the bullet.
As the progression and knowledge of percussion ignition grew, so did the various types of guns. By the early 20th century, there were literally thousands of weapons known as small arms. Out of all of them, probably none captures the imagination more than the handgun.
The role of handguns play in the military started out as basically being an officer's sidearm. It was a status symbol. Initially, handguns were issued to officers because they were supposed to be in a leadership position. Their hands were supposed to be free to give direction, to use the radio, to give the hand and arm signals to their troops, and they were not supposed to be the lead element in any kind of an attack.
They were almost a decorative item. The personal sidearm was as much a badge of rank, especially in the German army, as anything else. All German officers were issued pistols. Most American officers had pistols. George S. Patton carried 2, and these were his personal weapons. They were engraved, they were ivory handled.
Here again, the concept of the pistol as a badge of office. When he carried very bright white-handled personal pistols, he could be seen at a great distance as the leader of the army that he was. For instance, during Normandy, he carried both handguns, one on each side. They were very visible from almost any angle that newsreel photographers might film him during landings and major battle engagements. And they were also something that he felt raised the morale of the troops to see him going armed in front of them as a leader who was not afraid to shoot.
Decorative or not, handguns were more than just pretty. Many early 20th century pistols were finely built, deadly weapons that decades later are still considered the finest. One of the more notable is the Luger.
The Luger probably has the greatest aura, mystique about it. It's an elegant handgun. It's a beautiful weapon. It was probably one of the most prized collectibles in World War II. It was probably the weapon that solidified the position of the 9mm cartridge in handgun production, especially in Europe.
No other gun has been made exactly like it. It's a very well thought out design as to the physics of a handgun. Now it would be very expensive to build because there was an enormous amount of machining. The Luger pistol was the first really workable semi-automatic pistol and was the first to put a spring-loaded clip in the butt of the pistol so it would feed single cartridges up to that miniaturized machine gun action.
With the Germans heading into the First World War with an effective semi-automatic pistol, the United States competed with what would end up becoming the longest-serving sidearm of this century.
The Colt Model 1911 was the next semi-automatic pistol to be picked up and used in large quantities by a military organization, namely the United States government. The United States Army wanted a semi-automatic pistol, and they wanted it to be powerful enough that at close range it might do what is called founder a horse, make a horse falter in the cavalry charge, as well as firing on the cavalryman himself. The mounted charge was still regarded as an important military threat in the days when they started.
It has remained in service both in the United States forces and in other armies until the present day. It is still widely considered to be one of the finest military pistols ever built. The pistol will fire when caked with mud, dirt, dust, snow, all sorts of contaminants that would jam a finely built pistol like the Luger.
Colt 45, beautiful, beautiful automatic, but took 2 hands to shoot it right. They tried in those days to teach you how to shoot a Colt 45 caliber with 1 hand. We'll try it sometime. I never could do it. I had to use both. So I was learning the modern day of shooting like this.
Proving to the world that a semi-automatic handgun could be powerful and reliable too, the Colt 1911 began to make other countries rethink their designs. The Germans now realized that despite the elegance of their 9mm Luger, Its delicate mechanisms were prone to failure with wear when not properly maintained.
So the German government went its own way and purchased from a German designer a very advanced design called the Walther P38, pistol model 1938, that would use the 9mm cartridge, the same as the original Luger did, but had some advanced features that we still use. For instance, it had a double action trigger.
You did not have to draw the slide to the rear and release it back to battery to function the weapon. You could draw the first trigger pull, it would cock the hammer and fire it similar to a double action revolver, and then the rest of the rounds would be fired in semi-automatic self-loading.
Not all upgrades were due to mechanical deficiencies. Some changes were strictly for political reasons, like the United States signing of the 1949 NATO agreement.
Although the .45 caliber cartridge is undeniably effective, the United States, in common with other NATO countries, agreed in a treaty to use the 9mm cartridge in order to provide for ammunition interchangeability among the Allies in case of conflict in Europe. It is simply an attempt to make sure that NATO troops do not have to deal with differences in ammunition that prevent personnel in one army from using ammunition allotted from another.
We tested twice for 9mm pistols in this country, finally arriving at the Beretta handgun, which we call the M9. And it is designed to take the place of all .45s, of all .38s in military police use.
While there is nothing innovative about the M9, it has proven to be a reliable weapon. Yet to this day, the M9 remains controversial. Is it an advancement or a political compromise?
Every firearm that is a big departure from the previous service gun is criticized, usually by old veterans who felt more confidence in a gun that possibly had saved their life or the life of a loved one. A lot of this is perception. I would not want to be shot with any standard military arm.
The fighting in World War I began with the rapid German invasion of France through Belgium in early August 1914. The result of this offensive was many stagnant land battles, so that by November, the Western Front had settled into what could best be described as miserable trench warfare, which would prove to be more than just a muddy mess. To conduct trench warfare efficiently, both sides learned that close-range ground attacks were essential. Yet the individual soldier's rifle did not have the volume of fire needed to suppress defensive fire coming from the enemy's trench. What was needed was a portable rapid-fire weapon for close trench combat. This need was filled by one of the most radical introductions into the small arms category, the submachine gun firing pistol ammunition.
The submachine gun proved to be ideal for trench raiding parties because the spray of bullets could clear a trench of enemy infantry in very short order.
Yet in the end, the submachine gun was rarely used in the trenches. By the time most early models had been perfected, it was well after World War I. One of the earlier and more famous of these weapons was the Thompson, or Tommy gun, developed by retired U.S. Army General John Thompson.
General Thompson, when he set about to design the Tommy gun, called it a trench broom. He wanted a gun that in the hands of one soldier could lay the same kind of dense rain of bullets into a trench when the soldiers were coming up to it on foot that he could get by ordering a machine gun battery to rain rifle bullets down on it 3,000 yards away. That is why he called it a submachine gun rather than a machine pistol.
The Thompson submachine gun was the most widely used submachine gun of the Allied forces in World War II on the Western Front. It was the standard submachine gun in the early part of the war for both the British and American armies. It was used in the American Army until the end of the war.
It was a very, very effective, accurate weapon with high-quality parts, high-quality machining processes, and a very expensive weapon to manufacture. It gave a tremendous muzzle flash. It had a lot of psychological impact to have a full automatic weapon.
It was the widespread use of the Tommy gun during Prohibition on both sides that caused the first of the federal firearms laws to be passed in 1932 and 33 against full automatic arms in the hands of civilians.
Controversy over submachine guns was nothing new. In 1919, at the close of World War I, it had been banned by the Treaty of Versailles, leaving Germany, the leader in arms development, shackled in the research and development of small arms. But the Germans never forgot the importance of the submachine gun.
Submachine gun development had always gone on because that could be called police weapon development, which was permitted in any settled country, even by the Versailles Treaty against Germany. The Germans had a pretty good understanding of the 9mm cartridge by then, so they designed a very modern, we would still call it a fairly modern stamping industrial design.
The MP 38 and 40 represented the first attempts to construct a submachine gun using new manufacturing technology. The weapon fired 9mm parabellum ammunition at 200 meters relatively accurately when it was used as a shoulder-fired weapon with the stock extended and locked. It was an extremely reliable weapon.
The MP 38 and 40 were among the most popular guns of World War II. Witnessing early on the effectiveness of these weapons, many armies developed their own submachine guns. The British called theirs the Sten.
The Sten submachine gun, or machine carbine as the British Army first referred to it, was an attempt to construct an automatic personal weapon that could be built for absolutely minimum cost. The entire receiver was of drawn steel tubing. The construction of the weapon was crude by anyone's standards. It was an extremely cheap weapon. It was reasonably accurate. It could be used by almost anybody.
It was built out of haste, in panic, in an emergency situation, when they realized the effectiveness the Germans were having with submachine guns, and they had no design of their own. So they basically assembled what they thought were the best design features of a submachine gun, threw it together with low-quality materials, poor manufacturing processes, and hoped that it would work.
The military traditionalists were horrified by the advances in stamped metal and drawn metal submachine guns in World War II. They longed for the days when every weapon was built to last 1,000 years, made of gleaming blue steel with polished wood stocks. To them, these rather ugly, extremely utilitarian, and in the case of the Sten gun, positively crude weapons were little more than toys. Although in the end, these newer designs did prove themselves and led to an almost total replacement of submachine guns and automatic weapons in favor of those made from drawings, castings, stampings, and forgings.
The Americans would be next to take advantage of this new, inexpensive way of manufacturing arms.
The M3 grease gun was America's answer to the Sten and the German MP40. American troops nicknamed it the grease gun because of its tubular receiver, which did bear a slight resemblance to the grease guns commonly used in automotive service stations across the country.
The grease gun was a combination of features from all other well-known all-metal submachine guns. At the time it was done, about 1941 and 42. By 1943, it began to be issued to take the place of the Thompson gun. The M3 could still be made in greater quantity for the same amount of effort in our factories. It fired the .45 almost all the time. A number were made in 9mm to be parachuted to resistance forces in Europe.
There are many more modern weapons that do the job much better and will stay together longer and take more abuse. But I've had personal experience with the M3, and I just enjoy it because I can't believe something that cheap works.
Submachine guns continue to be an effective weapon on the battlefield. However, the underlying strength of any infantryman is the most powerful of all his small arms, his rifle. A soldier's best friend, the queen of the battlefield, the rifle. The rifle is the basic weapon of the infantryman. It is usually the first weapon handed to a new recruit, and it is the most powerful of all his personal arms. The standard rifle which most armies used up to the beginning of World War II was the bolt-action rifle, whose elderly design dated back a century. Still, these heavy, powerful weapons could reach out well over 2,000 yards. They were robust, reliable, simple to use, and deadly.
Probably the most popular and most influential military bolt-action rifle ever made was the model 1898 Mauser. The Mauser was issued as the basic personal weapon of every German infantry soldier.
It was a quite long rifle, which was very accurate and at 600 yards. Bullseye you could shoot with it. It was a medium-heavy rifle, was very reliable, never jammed, and was a bolt action. So you had to reload by hand, cock it every time you fired.
The Mauser was used by more than 20 countries. The bolt-action Mauser is undoubtedly the most widely used military rifle in history and is still used today in second-ranked units in a number of modern armies.
The German Mauser may have been the most widely used rifle, but the British Lee Enfield, designed around the same time, would become known as one of the best combat bolt-action rifles ever.
The opinion that it was probably one of the best bolt-action combat weapons is played out in its longevity, how long it was in the system. The action was fast enough and easy enough to manipulate for just about everybody that they wouldn't be thrown too far off a target, opening and closing the bolt and re-engaging the target.
British Enfield rifle was peculiarly British. It was of medium power, but it proved to be very sturdy and very accurate. And its ammunition proved to be very serviceable in the heavy Maxim water jacket machine guns that had become used in World War I. So it was a very intelligent answer to the military needs of the period.
At about the same time as the British were adopting their Lee Enfield rifle, the United States Army was looking at the best from both worlds, which resulted in the American Springfield 1903.
In World War I, the British Enfield and the American 1903 Springfield bolt-action rifle were brothers in the field. We fired the .30-06 cartridge, which is marginally more powerful than the Enfield cartridge. Both of them were approximately equally as useful as the German Mauser rifle from the other side. It was probably the most evenly matched war in the midst of World War I of any massive army war.
The Springfield was an excellent natural pointing weapon, and because of the widespread use of bolt-action rifles for hunting and target shooting by American youth in the early years of the 20th century, many recruits came to the Army already familiar with the operation of a bolt-action rifle.
Farm kids, we all knew how to shoot. I was a good marksman. I used to hunt ducks when I was 8, 9 years old. You had to back in those days. My dad had Springfield, and I got one as soon as I got old enough to shoot it and take care of it. So we were used to them. Springfield 30-06 was an excellent firearm, well tested, and we knew it most of us had a Springfield.
As powerful as these bolt-action rifles were, they could not be fired in rapid succession. Many semi-automatic rifle designs were tested, and in 1929, John C. Garand's M1 was the only one to survive testing at Aberdeen Proving Ground. The United States would enter World War II with the only army to have a semi-automatic rifle as standard issue.
The M1 Garand was adopted in 1936 for service use. Due to budgetary restrictions in the pre-war years, it was issued only in fairly small numbers. It must go into history as the first semi-automatic rifle intended for general issue to all combat troops of a complete army.
This weapon represents a quantum leap, really, in firepower because it's a semi-automatic weapon. In short, you load it with a clip of 8 from the top, and then every time you pull the trigger, it will fire 1 round. The problem is, once you get 8 rounds in here, there's no way to top the magazine off, and when you fire the last round, you get this sound.
Enemy troops would listen for the distinctive sound of the cartridge clip as it was ejected from the rifle. When it hit the ground, it made a sound different from the cartridge cases. And at that point, knowing that the American soldier was out of ammunition, the enemy would tend to get out of his positions and attack. In the Korean War, it was not uncommon for American soldiers to carry 1 or 2 extra Garand clips. They would fire 1 or 2 rounds and then throw the clip down on the ground next to them, and as soon as the enemy soldiers jumped up, they would nail them with the rest of their magazine.
Though the M1 Garand wasn't the perfect semi-automatic rifle, it certainly was innovative. There were many weapons that followed, clearly based on the Garand design. Several paved the way for even more firepower. The assault rifle. While the rifle was considered a soldier's best friend, his queen of the battlefield in the chess game of war, it became apparent that the rifle was underfired. Studies showed that in most major battles of this century, only about 40% of all riflemen were actually firing at any given time. Something had to be done to increase these soldiers' firepower. The solution? The assault rifle.
The modern assault rifle is a development of the Second World War. The assault rifle was an attempt to give the individual combat rifleman a weapon which would provide selective fire so that in conditions of really severe combat, he could use it as a submachine gun.
The assault rifle had to fulfill 3 functions. It had to be the basic infantryman's weapon. It had to have the range and the stopping power of a long gun. It had to be shorter than the old bolt-action and self-loading rifles. So it still had to be the basic weapon for the infantryman.
Once again, the Germans took the lead in this new rifle's development. In fact, it was the Germans who coined the phrase assault rifle for their new weapon.
German designers started looking at a light rifle bullet that would allow the soldier to carry a lot of ammunition in his gun and on his person and have the ability to fire full automatic at close range to suppress defensive fire. The cartridge is expected to be effective at several hundred yards, not a few thousand yards. And it's in a gun that doesn't weigh very much. And that is the main reason for the assault rifle, is to take the place of the submachine gun and begin to do the job of the main battle rifle.
Rather than design an entirely new cartridge, the Germans took their existing rifle cartridge and scaled it down for their new assault rifle, the MP-44.
The MP-44, or Assault Rifle 44, was the granddaddy of the modern gas-operated military assault rifle as we have come to know it. In fact, the most ubiquitous assault rifle on the face of the earth Although they were somewhat heavy, they weigh as much as a Thompson submachine gun empty, they were undeniably effective. They were issued in very large numbers in 1945, and many late war German units had whole battalions issued with large numbers of these weapons.
As with many weapon developments this century, the story of the assault rifle was entirely German. Only the Soviet Russians followed the German lead, first by copying their ammunition.
They immediately went to the design of their own intermediate cartridge, which in the Russian army is always a 30 caliber. And they got that cartridge together and got the beginnings of the Avtomat Kalashnikov together by 1945, continued experimenting with it and released it as the AK-47 in the relatively advanced tactical form that we still see.
The Kalashnikov AK-47 is the most produced, most widely used assault rifle in the history of firearms. It was influenced by the MP-44 as far as its basic layout and design are concerned. It is rugged, reliable, easy to manufacture. It has been made in a number of countries to the present day.
The AK has a very simple action that most people can be trained to understand and keep clean. And it is made by simple machining methods. It can be stamped out in large quantities, very much like the previous types of submachine gun we talked about. It's an industrial tool, like a rivet gun.
It is reliable in almost every climate, from the freezing cold of the Arctic to the hot, sandy deserts of the Middle East. It was one of the few rifle actions that could stand ingestion of a lot of sand and still function perfectly. It has been used by more countries than any weapon before or since. It is still the weapon of choice for national governments on both sides of the geopolitical boundaries.
Despite the success of the AK-47, the U.S. Army was not convinced an assault rifle would suit its needs. However, America's answer to the assault rifle would prove to be rather effective: the 30 caliber carbine.
The weapon is a very light 5.5-pound small rifle. A 30-round curved banana clip was developed for the Selective Fire M2 automatic version, which came about later in World War II. The carbine proved to be amazingly successful. It was extremely easy to shoot, and still is. It has very little recoil. Within its ballistic limitations, it is a very accurate weapon. It is only accurate out to about 250 to 300 yards. The cartridge was based on the old .32 Winchester handgun cartridge. It has much more muzzle energy than a .45 automatic, but the smaller bullet tends to overpenetrate rather than releasing its energy in the body of the enemy. And many soldiers found that the rifle required multiple hits before they could bring down enemy troops, especially in Korea, with the heavy quilted uniforms that the Chinese wore.
Still, the 30 caliber carbine was loved by many. Between 1941 and 1961, over 7 million were made.
In World War II, the Germans loved the carbine and captured as many as they possibly could. Many German troops were found with carbines after the Battle of the Bulge. It was an excellent weapon, and it perfectly fit the German tactics of aggressive, offensive fighting, reaching the enemy as quickly as possible and fighting primarily at short range.
After the Korean War, it was shown that the carbine could not take the place of a full assault rifle like the German STGs or like the Russian AKs. We tried to use them in Asia, and they did not work out that well, mainly because of a low-powered cartridge. A GI carbine is like a big pistol instead of a small rifle, but it was found that if you took the carbine and gave it a .22 caliber cartridge and a .22 caliber barrel, it began to have some advantages for the soldiers using it. There was a higher probability of hit for every shot fired.
As a result, the infamous M16 rifle was developed. It was the first small-bore caliber rifle to be issued in an assault rifle configuration.
It began to be seen that this country might benefit from having an approximately .22 caliber rifle that would have a high probability of hitting one soldier at 300 or 400 meters away with a gun that was easy to carry and that could hold many rounds of ammunition. The M16 rifle and its ammunition have been controversial.
The M16 is undoubtedly the most controversial rifle ever used by the United States. The Army insisted on changing the ammunition and substituted the DuPont smokeless powder for Winchester Western powder. The two gunpowders had different burn rates and different burn characteristics. The M16 soon proved to be a rifle susceptible to jamming, poor functioning, and a perceived lack of reliability. This became a big problem in the mid-60s in Vietnam.
Much of the rifle's malfunction was blamed on the conditions in Vietnam. With much of the fighting occurring in water, muddy rivers, and in rice paddies, powders in some ammunition burned with a higher residue. This attracted moisture, creating a sticky, glue-like substance inside the gun that contributed to many failures.
What would happen in this weapon, it has a complicated way to lock it into the firing position in here. And that area in the chamber could get fouled very easily. So you had to keep it clean. And if you didn't keep this clean, what would happen is the bolt would come and not seat itself. And it was hard to seat the bolt, and you can't clean a weapon during a firefight. Like all new things, it had been tested here in the States, but testing in the United States and Vietnam are two very different things.
The rifle was modified several times in an attempt to stop this. There were changes in the gas system, the operating system. One of the more obvious was the addition of a bolt assist handle, a knob sticking out at an angle on the right side of the weapon with which the soldier could strike with the heel of his hand, forcing the bolt fully closed. The problems did not really disappear until proper training was conducted and the troops learned how important it was to keep the weapon absolutely dry as much as possible.
As the war went on, this became a very, very effective weapon because you can fire fully automatically, and if you need to, you can shoot very accurately with this weapon. It ranges out to 460 meters or 500 yards.
There have been a lot of design changes resulting in the gun that we now call the main battle rifle M16. So what we had was the usual congressional controversy, which resulted in some people wanting to take it out of existence, others wanting to make fast fixes, which is what we eventually did, was a series of fast fixes, and then a gradual redevelopment of the project.
Perhaps it was worth it. The M16 and other assault rifle designs have gone through an evolution of many stages, resulting in a rifle class that has become among the most valued of personal weapons.
If I had to choose one weapon to carry in any kind of conflict or any kind of operation, be it urban, jungle, Arctic, it would be an assault rifle. It does fulfill the function of an individual infantry weapon. It's got the reach, it's got the stopping power, and it also functions as a light machine gun, being selective fire for full auto. It has a large magazine capacity, and being a smaller round, I can carry that many more rounds of ammunition to be self-sufficient on my own without the supply chain to catch up to me that much longer. An assault rifle is probably the weapon of choice for the majority of soldiers in the world's armies today.
With the large number of wars this century, the advancement of weapons technology has kept pace and continues today unabated. Research and testing is in full swing on an entirely new generation of weapons.
The U.S. Army and other military groups are experimenting with a whole range of new sensor devices which enable individual soldiers using rifle-mounted accessories to advance into a battlefield with far more tactical information than they have ever had before. Among these are helmets and special goggles and sighting equipment which interface with computers, which allow information from a database to be displayed on a visor in front of the soldier's eyes so that he literally can read a manual on identifying enemy materiel, tanks, artillery, whatever.
There are also rifles outfitted with remote thermal image viewing systems, enabling soldiers to see around corners without direct exposure to the enemy. It can scan the battlefield to acquire or engage targets in all battlefield conditions, smoke or fog, day or night. Microphones mounted on rifles enable soldiers to detect personnel at 300 meters and vehicles at 1,000 meters.
One of the problems of military weapons is their cost. An additional problem, which is hitting most industrialized societies, is the relative lack of skilled machinists and even engineers. Thus, even the firearms industry is going to radical new methods for them for designing and manufacturing new weapons.
CAD/CAM, or computer-aided design and manufacturing, is becoming the wave of the future. Many weapons can now be made without a machinist, and they can be produced in any CAD/CAM plant in the world.
It is possible now to set up a numerically controlled machining shop to put out very adequately designed and built firearms out of good materials, working right off a computer disk or right off of computer tape. And as long as you have the right materials, correct kinds and alloys of steels and aluminums and some other kinds of metals, so long as you have a legal right to manufacture arms in that plant, or even if you don't, you can get them out of it.
The advances in sensor technology, computerization, miniaturization of electronics, all are leading most modern first-rank armies into the 21st century as computerized warriors with built-in body armor, computers in their helmets, all sorts of sensors, sights, television sets, and whatnot mounted on the rifles, all miniaturized and lightened as much as possible. We are not as far away as we might think from the Imperial stormtroopers of Star Wars. It's only a matter of time. It will make war far different from anything it's ever been.
Even with technological advances, small arms will always remain an integral part of warfare. To this day, in all countries, small arms are made and distributed in the largest quantity, making these weapons the most important in the armory.
Small arms are the most essential piece of equipment for an infantryman because if he doesn't have a weapon that can effectively engage the enemy, all he becomes is a walking casualty for his own side. He's a totally non-functioning liability. He needs to be fed, clothed, taken care of medically, paid, transported, all the other creature and comfort services that are required for troops. But the biggest defining factor is the one guy out there with the bullets in his rifle that's on the ground in front of the enemy taking possession.
With the soldier's personal weapon being such an integral part of himself, his country, and his way of life, it is no wonder a bond exists between a soldier and his rifle.
The soldier's individual weapon does become his best friend, his worst enemy, a nemesis, an albatross. You're given this thing to take care of. You end up putting a lot more time and maintenance into it than you actually use it in a conflict or engaging anything. And you sleep with it, you eat with it, you take it to the latrine with you, you take it when you to your personal hygiene. It goes everywhere you go, and you must take care of it. It does nothing for you until you engage the enemy. That's when you find out that that's the best friend that you've got.
An infantry officer once said, "You can keep your atom bombs, your tanks, and your airplanes. You'll still have to have some little guy with a rifle who winkles the other bastard out of his foxhole and gets him to sign the peace treaty." It's the personal weapon in the hands of the dedicated fighting man that ultimately settles the conflicts of nations.
Thank you for watching this edition of the American Rifleman Video Collection. Proceeds from this program support the NRA's efforts. We're proud to present this unique collection, which so clearly illustrates the history and evolution of guns. By collecting these videos, you'll appreciate like never before the fascination and the power of guns, entrusted to us all.